Hey up. So, Space Marines starter set. This little video is dedicated to my good friend Jim, Greg, who foolishly has become a new member to the cult. He has unfortunately got himself a starter set, which means he's got the basic paints. So as you can see here, I've primed with a white, which is what he has got. But then I've cheated, and while he has got Macragge Blue as part of his starter set paints, I've used the Macragge Blue spray. It's just quicker. Same thing with a brush. Apply it all over. Make sure you get all the creases, every part of it. Job done. The paints that he has got are very much the basic paints. You see a Runefang Steel, Onyx White, Agax X Shade, Lead Belcher, Retributor Armour. You can see. So, using the basic colours that's available, I'm going to do a basic job on a Space Marine to show what can be done without having to go out and buy all the paints. So right here is basically all the paints you need. Your primary colours, because you can mix these paints. You don't need to have 13 shades of blue to make one bit of armour look good. That's all you're going to need out of the starter set. That's the Space Marine starter set of things. Make sure you get some water, and make sure you've got a palette, and ideally a bit of tissue paper, kitchen roll, whatever you want to use. I'm going to be using bog standard brushes, a starter brush and a dry brush. I'm going straight in with the black, a bit of black on your palette, a little bit of water, and this is basically going to be applied to all the little recess parts of the model where the blue armour isn't, basically. Check how thin it is, make sure it's flowing nice. You don't want your brush too overloaded, otherwise you're bogging up all the details. So you take your model, you don't need to have a holder like this, but basically all these little insert bits where they're soft, I guess it's the underarm maybe, the bits that you can see, normally elbow creases, knee joints, groin area, a little bit of black on there. You don't need to be too neat because you can touch it up. If you do make a mistake, you can just go back over with the blue and touch up any bits you may have missed. So picking out any items that you may want black while you have your black open. Which, camera wise, not the best. I'm trying to paint and film at the same time, so you have to excuse the fact that half the time you won't actually see the miniature. But nice thin coat over everything you need, and then you get a second coat, thinning down your paints as and when you need. You don't need to go with one big thick coat, otherwise you're going to just block out all the detail of the miniature itself. Using thick paint in the right consist, it can work. However, you do sometimes get brush marks, and it leaves, if you've got a smooth panel or a smooth area and you've planted a big chunk of paint on with, a bit haphazard, you can leave a bit of texture, and you don't want that. So just going over the gun, I will do this all black, because when I come back in with the silver, I will just pick out the silver parts over the black base. It will just give you a better base for the metallics. Getting yourself the little basic paint set, if you are getting into the hobby, is a good way to get into the hobby, because you get all the basic paints you need, and you get all the tools that you may need, and a couple of guys. The last thing you're going to do is go out buying a ton of guys, and then next thing you know, you've got a pile of plastic you can't do it with. So right here we're going to do a technique called dry brushing, as I was showing you on the palette. a bit of blue, a bit of white, you get a lighter blue. Simple as. It's very simple. It's a primary school thing. That, to be fair, a lot of people do forget that you can mix these paints together. So a bit of blue with a bit of white to just make that lighter shade of blue, just a touch lighter than what you've already got on your base coat. I've gone quite subtle with mine, just because I didn't want it to be too harsh. Because if you do load your dry brush up too much, you can then obviously change the complete colour of the model as it is. You just want to be picking out the hard edges on the model itself. So, as you'll see in a moment, you'll see how you take your dry brush, load it up with some blue paint, but then what you need to do is take your kitchen roll and basically get rid of the majority of the paint. You don't need a lot on. Once it starts to look like it's not coming off like that, that is ready. So then you take your model, imagine this light is coming from above, and just brush down over the entire model, and what's left of the paint, that lighter shade of blue, will then catch on any raised areas of the model, and then that will give you the subtle highlight of the light shining down, as opposed to using the edge highlight method where you end up taking 3 or 4 different shades of blue and carefully, meticulously taking over edges around the model. It is a nice way to do it, but if you're new, it takes a lot of practice to get to the standard that some people you may look online are doing. Dry brushing is it's not a cheats method, but it is a quick method to get them highlights, especially if you're planning to play the game and you just want them tabletop ready. And as you can see, there's no real finesse there. It's just get over the model as you can. I do seem to be going over the model quite a bit, and that's because I'd done quite a subtle tone with the new blue, so it doesn't really show that well under the light or on camera. But again, you have to take my word on that one. There is a subtle change in the lighting and in the shades. But always do a downward motion, and if you have got a light that you can position overhead, use that as a source of light, because that will show you what parts of your model will be highlighted by natural light and what parts are in shade. And for some reason I've zoomed in. So, metallics. Again, using the silver, you can pick out all the parts on the backpack, the little exhausts, the little domey exhaust bits. I always seem to paint them silver. I don't know why. I just do. It's just what I do. The little vent above the top, part on the chainsaw. I just pick a bit of silver out on that. Same on the actual teeth of the chainsaw. Always quite satisfying doing that as well. Just running your brush, load with paint across, and it just does pick up nicely. Again, picking up the casing, all the metallics on the gun. Just basically moving parts. I leave the actual bulk body. Now that, oh, fair enough. The primer sprays I've used. So yeah, with the silver's done there. I don't know what's happened in the video, but fair enough. On the gold. Now, Retributor armour I really do love, because it is very much a perfect colour for me. I like it. It works really well. But again, straight across the eagle on the chest, around the rims, on the shoulders, on the wrist, you'll tend to get it. And it is a very nice colour, but again, try not to overload. This is, if you do make a mess, or if you do overlap slightly, it's not the end of the world. You can just mix a bit of blue and go back over and just touch up the blue around it, and none the wiser then. I think I do actually do that myself. I end up clipping a few parts and then touch it with the blue after. So yes, the bolters, you can actually do whatever colour you want. To be honest, you can do anything, whatever colour you want. You don't need to be lumbered down with the colour schemes that are preset by Games Workshop to a certain degree. The world's your oyster, but if you paint something up, you know, black and you're using a white scheme thing, and it's just it looks a bit out of place. But you know, again, it's the rule of cool. You do what you want. This, for the argument's sake, I've just done the basic poster boys for Games Workshop, the Ultramarines, just because that is what I tend to paint. And it is a good way to get started because it's got a bit of everything. You've got nice flat blues, you've got subtle highlights, you've got metallics, you can throw some red in there. You've got a lot of few things going off with one kind of model. Just pick out any little details again, anything you feel that you want to be gold. So in this instance, I've gone the rims on the shoulders, the quill on the chest, the little skull and cross on the arm, the pauldron on the pommel on the sword I've done in gold, and that's basically it. Same again on the other side. Just take your time because they are fiddly. If you can take off the back, if you haven't glued it, which I had, you can take that off and gives you a bit more freedom to get to some details. But again, it's not the end of the world, and if you do catch any other thing with the gold paint, you can touch it back up again. That's a little bit of detail on the gold, and then that should be two nice little coats coating up the gold trim. It's always better to do two coats than one coat, just because you'll get a better thin consistency and it will look better at the end result. Now again, like I said, bit of blue, bit of yellow and bit of red, your primary colours. From these colours you can make any other colour. So you want purple, you mix red and blue. You want green, you mix yellow and blue. Now, if you mix all three together, what do you get? If you remember primary school, you'll remember you get brown. So a lot of times you'll see people doing the starter packs and they will use black on the pouches, which there's nothing wrong with that. You know, like I say, you can paint them how you want to paint them. That's the joy of this hobby. You can paint how you want to paint. For me, I just think the brown pouches look a lot better. So mixing red, blue and yellow, you know, you can build up a nice little bit, add bits as you need so you get that nice tone of brown that you want. And then once you've got that colour, again, check the consistency, check the flow. It's very much trial and error depending on what shade you want. I want quite a light chestnutty brown. So it was just a case of adding bits as and when I needed them. Check the consistency, check the flow, and then go around and pick out. Again, camera work shoddy, but so you got your gun holster, and if you got a pouch on this back, and then there's a pouch around the front. But as you can see, it covers nice. You can mix the colours nice, and it just gives you that leather brown look, if you like. But again, it is entirely up to you how you paint things and what you paint. If you want to paint bog standard ultramarines, you paint bog standard ultramarines. If you want to go sifting through all the lore and the lost, you know, all the different armies, schemes that's out there, all the sub factions, or even create your own, there's nothing stopping you. You've got them paints in front of you. You think, oh, do you know what I think would look good is purple armour with a green trim. Go for it. There's nothing stopping you at all. You want to do that, you do that. Just make sure it's consistent through your army, and when you play, you know, you have certain rules that you have to adhere by. You just attach a different faction's rules to your set of guys. So the last little pouch there. Just pick up any last little details again with the brown. While you paint out, you might as well, rather than saying I'm going to paint this section, this section, this section, and then going back and going, oh, I need some more brown. If you try and get it all in one hit, at least then you've got the same consistency of colour. Or you do the smart thing and say, well, I use 3 dabs of blue, two dabs of red, and 3 dabs of yellow, and that made me my brown. Obviously, once you get further into the hobby, there's nothing stopping you just buying a pot of brown. But for now, as you can see, it's there. That's your brown. That's your brown pouches and your holster. Again, a little bit of blue where you may have overlapped, and just pick out any little bits that may need just touching back up to be blue. Don't think if you've overlapped or you've caught it that it's end of world, because end of the day it's paint, and paint can always go over paint. So while the red's still wet, little dab of red on the purity seal at the back. Again, this is something you can mix a different colour red. You could use green, you could use yellow. Red just seems to be the bog standard colour, if you like. Once you get more into it, you can choose to use a separate colour to highlight it. Use 2 different shades of red. But that's basically it. Now, the fiddly part, eyes. You do not need to do the eyes. But I'm going to show you here. This is, do the first eye, and you can do it just little dabs, gentle touches with the tip of your brush, just to fill in that lens with a bit of red. It's subtle, but it does work. Now on this side, I'm going to show you what to do if you are a bit heavy-handed. So you try to be nice and careful. Oh, got a bit on the bottom there. Oh, I don't know what to do. Right, simple. Block it in so that the lens is full, and then all you need to do again is back to your blue. Back to your blue, little dab of blue out, and as you look, you can see where the lens stops. And all you need to do is just over the red, and just narrow it down so that only the insert of the eye is red, and the rest of the helmet is still blue. Again, it's a little bit of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back method, but it does work, and if you are a bit heavy-handed, it is something to consider. Now, purity seals on the back, so you've got your paper. You can paint them just white. Again, you can do anything you want with them, but you can just paint them white and have done with it. I've chosen to add a little bit of yellow to the white. To be fair, the base white is slightly more grey than white, so just a bit of warmth to it to give it more of a creamy, papery colour, if you like. But again, you can literally go straight from the pot and do white. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. Again, see consistency, nice little bit of a creamy colour. And just coat the paper tags hanging from the seal. So we'll check around the model for any other bits that may need. Sometimes there's more than one. Many a time I've missed one that's attached to the foot, and it's only towards the end when I've realised. Again, I apologise for camera angles. It's not my forte, and being the first video, it'll get better if I continue this. So, that's your boy. Basically, is done to a degree. What you can do now is start to play around with the extra bits. So, washers. Now, washers are very good things. Two main washers that you will use is Agrax Earthshade, which is what you get in the starter set, which is what we're using here, which is very good on the gold. Agrax on the gold is a go-to for me. I usually use Agrax on any materials, so leather pouches will always get that. So it's simple as load your brush up with a bit of the wash, the shade, and just blob it on. Because it's quite watery, it will find any recesses to sit in. Just got to keep an eye on it, because then it will basically pool up in areas, and if you're not careful, it can look a little bit out of place. However, I do find on leather, if you can make it pool in a certain way, it gives you that sort of worn look. On the gold, because it's Agrax is quite a warm shade, it enhances the warmth of the gold, and it just gives it a bit more of a rosy look, if you like. Just go around, pick the trim out. The second one you will normally use is one called Null Nile. Now, I would recommend, if you're going to buy anything on top of your starter pack, would be some Null Nile. Clues in the name, oil. You would use this on metallics. Just knock the blow cover, fair enough. So use it on your guns, on your swords, your belt buckle, on any exhaust trims, things like that. Agrax works, but like I said, it has got that sort of browny tinge to it, so it doesn't work as good as the black Null Nile wash, but again, it works just as well. So in this instance, using it, just going to the purity seal, because it was still quite white, I decided to just give it a heavy wash on the purity seal, so that it gave more of a worn paper kind of look. Imagine dipping a piece of paper in some tea. That's essentially what you're doing with this. Just go around then, picking any pools that may have formed. But So on the Aquila there, you'll see it's built up a little bit on the chest. All you do is take your brush and just dab it off. A little dab, and your brush will soak up all the excess and still leave a bit round. So what I noticed that I've done on this is I've gone quite heavy on the shoulder, and it has left a bit of a splodge, which you'll see when I turn the model slightly. Again, not an issue, just simply take your blue and give it a little coat. So you can just sort of see there, I've kind of come in a bit with the blue, with the wash. So there, little flick. You can actually see better there that there is a contrast between the dark and light. So that you can see that the dry brushing did work. Well, there you have it. It's almost done. Next step is to get rid of this guy, and we'll work on the base. Stick it to one side, let him hug that paint tub. And then in your set, you will get the Astro Granite Technical Paint. Now this goes on a lot different. I would recommend an old brush or a toothpick or maybe like an old file. And this is basically how you do it. You just splodge it on. You may be wondering why the base was already coated. That was just purely through me not pressing record when I originally put some on the base. So you don't need to put a base coat down. These paints are really good for giving you a very simple, effective base. I do like this one. You can leave it like that. Just build it up in certain areas. Make sure to leave a little hole for the guy to reattach to. Clean your tools off. And then using the power of magic, the power of a hairdryer. Dry them on, dry the base, and then just to finish it off, use a bit of black just around the rim. You don't need to. Again, you could paint the rim grey to match the technical paint. You could drag the technical paint around the edges. You could paint whatever colour you want. My personal preference is just to wrap a bit of blue, bit of black around, just so it just insinuates the actual base colours that you've put down. Just carefully around. You can see a few bits, so because I'd primed the model with blue, there was a bit of blue showing through the grey. So just with the black, very lightly, just dabbed the areas, which won't show up too much because you've got that sort of granite looking base. And that is your base done, basically. Again, there's so many different variations. You've got the cracking effects, you've got ones that are for desert. If you move away from Citadel, there's so many different variations of bases you can do. But there you have it. Finished. Or finished to the level of game on the tabletop and use him. Finished to the degree that we've only used the paints that come in the starter pack. With the exception of using a spray can for the McCrag blue, which again, that could have done with brush. I was just being time consuming. So if I got it at hand, what's the point in using it?